Same reason you'd have a crowbar with Supreme written on it.
Exactly. If you throw the word Supreme on everything, it becomes 5 times more expensive. First up on the show, we're going to talk about how many pennies you're going to need to save up in order to buy games now.
All the pennies I don't have.
You
Therefore,
don't.
no new games.
You have no new pennies, and therefore you can't have new games. The target price now for new releases of video games seems to be $70.
Yes, I've noticed this lately, this trend of especially like Electronic Arts and like Square Enix, and then Nintendo's hopping on that too.
Yeah, everybody is pretty much going to the new standard of $70. Which is up from the $60 mark. And, you know, if I look back far enough, not too long actually, maybe 2010 or so, we were at about $50. But it stayed at $50 for a really long time.
Yeah, and I was okay with $50 for a new title, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it was even, if I remember correctly, I think it was even $50 back in like N64 era. Like it was
I don't remember that far.
Yeah, but it had been staying steady for a while now. But yeah, now first release games, it's $70 if you want to buy it out of the gate. That seems to be a pre-purchase price as standard.
Yeah.
And
I'm not a fan.
No, I'm not a fan either. I'm not a fan. Like, I understand that over time things get more expensive, but at the same time, does it? It's going to cost more to actually produce the game, but
Sure.
How much in, like, the physical assets and the distribution do they have to do? Because most of the games that we buy now aren't even in physical form.
Right. If it was a physical thing and I was buying like a deluxe edition that came with a fancy box or something like that, I might be able to understand it. But I'm not even getting physical media anymore.
Right, and a lot of people aren't. Like, you pay the same amount. This is always shocking to me, but you pay the same amount if you get the boxed edition as if you get the digital edition. If it's literally just data that's stored on my hard drive, it costs the same amount as if I got a box with a physical disc and the booklet and everything, and then placed it into my computer, at which point it basically just downloads all the data from the internet now, because most of it's not even on the disc. But it costs the same amount, so maybe just because they need to keep a physical storefront copy for the people who actually still use discs.
Right.
And they
Console gamers,
yeah. You can buy the discs for PC. They're just not as common as they used to be.
But the thing is, if you're going to charge $70 for a game, like, it used to be $50, and I think we were okay with $50 back then because there was a lot less competition from third-party or indie devs back in the 2010s.
Sure.
Steam has been around for a while, but, like, the indie scene wasn't nearly as big as it is now. And now these AAA companies are charging $70 for what actually amounts to being subpar gaming. I know Forspoken right now is a bit contentious in a lot of news because it's just underwhelming, apparently. It's just not great.
Well, it's something that we've kind of discussed on the show before, that I've seen plenty of media about, but I want to say it was a Nasu video that I watched not too long ago, which was the state of perpetually unfinished games. That the idea is that once upon a time, back in the day, as we all know, you would get a physical copy of a game, and when you got the physical copy of the game, it had to be a completed game. Because there wasn't like a day one patch. They couldn't have a roadmap of content. It wasn't even attached to the internet. They sold you the game, and that game was in its final form. It had to be.
Right.
So they would play test it, they would put everything that they needed to on there. There wasn't any add-ons or anything like that. They had to give you a finished product. In the modern era, though, there's this idea of good enough to ship. Which is, I'm gonna give you enough so that you know that a game exists on here, with the promise that eventually it will be everything that we wanted it to be, but no
Right.
guarantee of it.
And there have
So-
been some pretty decent games that have come out and like delivered on
those promises.
the promises. Again, an example that everyone throws out is usually No Man's Sky. Came
Right.
out kind of in a really rough spot, but over the last like 6 years, they have added to it and continued to expand upon it, all for free, mind you.
Yes.
It just made it a much better game, and like a lot of it, what they wanted to do is now a thing that exists in the game.
Right. And Cyberpunk is usually the other one that they refer to, because when that came out, it was a buggy, glitchy mess.
Yeah, but Cyberpunk already has a DLC that you're gonna have to pay for that they're coming out with, and they could work on finishing the game first.
Yeah, there is this drive to find out ways to further monetize your game as quickly as possible, get it to a finished enough state where you can start paying for it. Unfortunately, though, that is not always the case. There's been plenty of games that have all but been abandoned by their companies before they're even done. One of the ones that I am always reminded of is a little game called Anthem. You probably remember that from a ways back. There was basically a roadmap of content for them from BioWare. They kept talking about like the Storm or the Tempest or whatever that was coming out, and it came and it was just pathetically sad.
Yeah.
And it kind of led to the downfall of any further content reveals. And then if it's an online game where they need to support it and they decide that they're just going to turn the servers off, you might not be able to play it at all, which is pretty annoying. But I think the other thing, and one of the reasons why games had actually stayed at like the $50 mark for as long as they did, was because ultimately you're probably not paying $50. You're probably paying closer to $100 when all is said and done, because now you gotta get the DLC, and you have the skins, or you have the extra currency, you have the microtransactions.
Yeah, and I think one of the things they're doing with that now is they're going, hey, we're going to charge $70, but there aren't going to be any microtransactions in there.
Sure, I buy that. I don't see that happening, though. I think it's going to be $70, and it's going to be the same microtransactions. If they can do loot boxes, they'll figure out how to do loot boxes, and they'll be paid DLC.
Absolutely.
I don't see them getting away from that.
I feel like loot boxes aren't as much a thing as they were a couple years ago anymore.
And I think that that's mostly from the public pushback on it. It's definitely not because it wasn't profitable.
No, it's because parents are mad.
Yeah, and I think it started to open them up to some, not just bad PR, but for some legal action in some cases.
I think instead of the loot box type of model, generally speaking, games go with the cosmetic stuff, like League of Legends, which makes all its money via skins.
One of the most profitable games there is Fortnite. And Fortnite is free. The reason why they make any money at all is because of the Battle Pass, and everything that you get in Battle Pass is cosmetics. If people are trying to figure out why would you pay for cosmetics in a free game, I'm telling you right now, the reason is status.
Same reason you'd have a crowbar with Supreme written on it.
Exactly. If you throw the word Supreme on everything, it becomes 5 times more expensive. It's brand recognition, it's status symbols, it's there to impress other people. So if I come in and I have a cape and a tomato head, other players in Fortnite might think I am cool. That's it. And that's worth a lot of money, apparently. That's a good market to be in. There's a lot of free games right now that are making buco bucks.
Oh yeah.
Big time. But the AAA titles, they still want to, have an upfront cost. And that's fine if they want to deliver an actual experience. That's more than what a free-to-play offering is. If they want to do that, that's great. But if it's going to be the $70, and then you still have all the other stuff that's on top of it, then we've just raised the initial buy-in for a title that's going to still cost inordinate amounts of money.
Yeah. And I can tell you right now, I'm not buying a game that costs $70.
I cannot think of many titles that would come out where I would just pay that out of the gate. In the modern landscape too, maybe this is the ray of hope that everyone can take away, is that luckily the AAA market is not the only market for games anymore.
Yeah.
The big guys are facing competition from smaller game studios, smaller dev houses, smaller publishing houses that are able to make interesting games that are maybe smaller games, but are significantly less expensive even at starting prices. We're talking maybe $20 or $30 that are going to provide quite a bit of bang for your buck, while also supporting smaller developers.
Yeah.
So, and those are readily
on
available.
a side note, even if a game that costs $70 is half off, you're still paying almost that $50 cost.
You certainly are.
You're paying that $35.
They do like the sales of the Ultimate Edition of those AAA games, and so it's like, oh yeah, it's like 65% off if you get the Ultimate Edition of like Assassin's Creed Ragnarok or Valhalla. It's got Ragnarok, it's got the druids and everything. I saw that recently and it was like 65% off. It's still like $50.
Yeah.
Because to get all of the additional content in the deluxe edition and everything is normally like $120 or $130. Fun fact though, I actually did buy Valhalla, but I just bought like the Ragnarok edition, so it's the base game and the Ragnarok expansion, and it was $15. And it's like, okay, that's fine. I'm not gonna buy all the other stuff for twice the price or whatever. $70, I think it's unnecessary, frankly. I understand that developers need to get paid. I wish that they would do better paying their actual designers and coders and people that work for them, and that it wasn't just going to the CEOs. Not that I would ever accuse any game companies of doing that, but knowing how much they monetize after the fact, and all of the additional content that they're going to make that they're going to want to get paid for as well, it seems unnecessary to raise that rate. Especially, like I mentioned earlier, that so much of it doesn't even need distribution or store shelving, shelf space now, because you'll get most of your sales digitally. What kind of game would have to get released for you to be willing to pay that out of the gate? Just your fantasy game, the pie-in-the-sky dream game that you'd be willing to pay that kind of money for.
Right.
I want to know what that is. I can't make it happen, but I'd be interested in what it is.